Welcome to the Public Works Podcast, where we bring you the people, projects, and stories shaping the communities we live in. I'm your host for today's episode, Shane Silsby. In today's episode, we head to Anaheim, California, a city at the center of some of the most ambitious and high-profile development projects in the country. From the transformation of the Honda Center area through the OC Vibe mixed-use development, to the future expansion of Disneyland with its Disney Forward efforts, to preparing for the global stage with the LA 28 Olympics, and the ongoing conversation around the Angels baseball stadium site, Anaheim is evolving in a big way. But behind all of that evolution is something most people don't always see or think about. That's the infrastructure, planning, and coordination that is usually led by an agency's public works department. Joining us today is Rudy Emami, who is the public works director for the City of Anaheim, someone who's at the intersection of infrastructure and economic development and helping to turn these major visions into reality with the rest of the city team. In this episode, we'll talk about Rudy's journey into public works, the critical role infrastructure plays in economic growth, and what it really takes to deliver a project at this scale. I hope you enjoy this episode. Let's get into it. Welcome back to another episode of the Public Works Podcast, the show that brings you the people, projects, and their stories and how they're trying to make our communities better. I'm your host, Shane Silsby, for this episode, and today we're headed to, and we are in, one of the most dynamic cities and tourist destinations in Southern California, and that's the City of Anaheim. Joining us today is Rudy Emami. He's with the City of Anaheim as the Public Works Director, where he's helping lead efforts at the intersection of infrastructure, economic development, and some of the most high-profile projects in the country. We'll be talking a little bit about some private developments, OC Vibe, a little bit maybe about Disney Forward, the impact of the 28 Olympics, and the future of the Angel Stadium site, because it's an iconic venue in the city of Anaheim. And we're going to talk about how public works can be right at the center of all of that. So sit back, hope you enjoy this show, and welcome Rudy to the show.
All right, thank you, and welcome to Anaheim, and appreciate you being out here. We've enjoyed a great career partnering with each other when we were at the county. Happy to be a part of the show.
Yeah, Anaheim's interesting in that it's, I think, the most populous city maybe right now in Orange County, but it swells up, right? It has tourists that come and swells to high populations. It's at the intersection of many freeways and arterial streets. We've got some flood control channels in the area, so a lot going on in Anaheim.
Yeah, I mean, we have two major league sports teams. Yeah. We have the Ducks and the Angels, and then we have, of course, our Anaheim Resort, home to Disneyland, and the largest convention center on the West Coast. So our population could swell up by the size of another city. Any given day. Yeah, we have a lot in Anaheim.
That's interesting. So Orange County, basically, you have some beaches, you have where people live, and then you have what's going on in Anaheim. That's what's going on in Orange County. It's an important place to be, and Public Works has an important role here. To start, you're in the role of Public Works Director now for this great city. Can you tell us a little about your career journey, how you got started maybe in engineering and then end up here on the public side?
Yeah, I grew up in Anaheim, and I went to school at Cal State Long Beach. I was getting towards the later part of my school years, and I decided I needed to get an internship, get some experience before getting out there and going into the real world. There was an opportunity for an internship here at Anaheim. It was in my hometown. Took it. It was a great opportunity because it was a really great time in Anaheim. That was the first golden age we were going through. That was the transformation of building what the resort is today. We were expanding our convention center. OCTA was expanding all of the freeways going through Anaheim, the I-5 mainly. There was so much going on at that time, and being exposed to that really had a huge impact on me.
Yeah, sounds like it, and that's interesting. We've known each other for many years. I didn't know that you grew up here. I know you're in the area, so that's cool. Reminds me of my first job was an internship near the city where I was living, and that's how I got my start in public service too, so that's cool for you. Was there a moment or a project early in your career? You mentioned all those things going on, but anything that really hooked you into staying into public works or the engineering profession?
Yeah, it was seeing that impact, that early planning at the city level, the long-term visioning. We knew, obviously, Walt Disney had a vision for Anaheim way back in the 50s, and then in the 90s, we had this transformational vision of what the resort should be, and just bringing in our own utilities. We have in Anaheim our own water and power as part of the city. all those decisions that were made early on and what kind of impact that they have to just daily quality of life issues are just really, really impactful.
Yeah, that's exciting. And people don't always think about that when you think of a big baseball stadium or a big convention center. That takes resources, or it takes energy and water and streets and all of that to make that happen. So that's exciting. So you saw that kind of on the ground floor. This is what we were trying to do, and you kind of saw that push off for the future of Anaheim.
Absolutely.
That's cool. Any roles or experiences that shaped how you approach the infrastructure delivery today for the city? The way Anaheim does it versus somebody else, or what you experienced there, and how you all are able to be successful?
Yeah, I always thought Anaheim took a unique approach, especially in those early years. I was exposed to the way Anaheim did things, and that was my only real experience in government. Right? And then when I graduated, I went out and worked in private and got to work with a lot of different governmental agencies, and I got to experience the entire spectrum of that, right? And that's what attracted me back to Anaheim, because I thought Anaheim was a lot more progressive and took a lot more risks. At the time, when you think about back in the 90s too, when they were going to build the arena that we have now, the home to the Ducks, and what that's turning now into, that seed that was planted then is turning into the OC vibe now. And you mentioned Disney and turning into a second park, potentially a third park, the expansion of what we're calling Disneyland Forward now. We also went through the remodeling of our baseball stadium.
It sounds like Anaheim was able to move things forward, or you saw some action, some activity. And not every city or government agency is like that.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes more analysis, more regulation. We got to figure out what to do, plan.
Afraid to take risks.
Afraid to take risks. And so some of the execution might have excited you and say, oh, this is a place I want to be.
Yeah, the fact that the city would take risks was really attractive. So many people are thinking in 4-year terms because the cycle of was the politics of the day going to rule. The fact that the city was willing to have these long-term strategic plans and stick to them and reap the benefits, and having that experience of saying, hey, when we do this and we plan long-term, we're going to see fruits from that, and let's keep that formula going, and we're doing that now.
I like how you talked about planting a seed, because things don't happen overnight in governments, and you have to start somewhere and launch, and then you can course correct. But a huge convention center would have taken potentially a decade of planning, design, and figuring out the construction and land massing and all of that stuff. And so it's great to be able to look back once you have some of those accomplishments and say, I remember when we started doing that and the hard work it took to get there. But everybody needs a little help. And do you recall someone that might have acted as a mentor or kind of a leader you could look up to as you went through the process to assist you in your journey?
Yeah, and I don't want to take away from anyone, because I feel like I have had a lot of great mentors through my career. But
Sure.
if I had to select one person, our former public works director, Natalie Meeks, who I think had such a great time being my mentor, she decided to even come back after retirement to be a council member.
There you go. I'm looking out for you.
It's still there. She put a lot of trust in me early on, gave me a lot of responsibility, which, again, I think we know people want to be able to have some exciting projects to work on and be trusted and given opportunities. And she gave me a lot of that. Multiple projects, big and small. I think one of my early opportunities was with a major landslide we were having in the city, right? And it was new, and we were trying to figure it out. And it was very short time frames, but the level of trust I was given then led to other opportunities like that, and ultimately got me to where I am today. But I couldn't have done it without her.
That's a good example, and she was involved in a lot of great projects too. I know. I should mention, in California, there's a lot of times we work on a natural disaster of some sort, so you got to dive in and address some of that. You've clearly built a career at the intersection of engineering, planning, leadership, new projects, emergency response, which is exactly what cities like Anaheim need today, and many cities might be lacking folks that can do that, so they're fortunate to have you here. But as we look at how Anaheim differs even a little bit more than other cities, I think it circles around economic development, and you have a good partnership with your economic development department, I know. But many cities, they probably don't even have an economic development department, just not focused that way. Maybe a bedroom community, beach community, whatever the case might be. But when people think about economic development, they often think about the developers or the financing or the policy. But public works does usually play a very big role behind the scenes in that. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that connection for Anaheim. How do you see public works contributing to the economic development in how Anaheim runs its strategies and plans for developing land?
I think we're part of the mix. I think we're an important part of that mix because a lot of this development they bring in for economic development or bringing in new businesses, it always starts with infrastructure. Do they have the infrastructure they need and they can rely on? Do they have not only just the infrastructure, but how reliable and how economical it is, right? Like it's another thing that really attracts businesses in Anaheim is being able to have that economical water and power. And then as developments come in, how creative are we with the financing? I think our Platinum Triangle is a great innovative way of financing large developments rather than focusing on individual developments coming in and setting up their own community financing district. We took the entire Platinum Triangle and had the city create that. So there was clear financing for defined lists of infrastructure that was needed to support all this development. So individual developers weren't burdened with all of it, but they needed a predictable amount of tax per unit or square footage that they were going to build. It was going to cover the mitigation requirements on the environmental document. So having that reliable and predictable set of requirements for a developer and knowing that the city is going to be able to deliver what they needed to on time helps with that reputation of this is where people want to invest.
And I think it's a really good plan, and I might ask you to talk a little bit more about the Platinum Triangle, but some of that gets to being infrastructure ready or having infrastructure readiness, which many developers, investors want to see because that's one less thing they have to worry about, right? I know in other areas of the country, other cities, okay, a developer just goes in over there, and then you have to move all that infrastructure over, power, water, sewer, all of that to serve that. But then the next project might be 10 miles away in a different direction, how you're extending and expanding. But through the Platinum Triangle approach, I know you have different targeted areas in the city, but for the Platinum Triangle, you said this is where we're trying to target investment. And so infrastructure readiness is part of that plan, obviously planning, zoning. But do you want to talk a little bit more about the Platinum Triangle in relation to where it is for the city, the bookends, and how it's focused, and then how that push became that was the area you're going to target?
The Platinum Triangle sits at an intersection of a couple of our major freeways, the 5 freeway and the 57 freeway, and it's home to where our Honda Center is, home to the Ducks, and then our Angel Stadium. And then it was surrounded primarily with a lot of low-rise industrial buildings. That area was completely rezoned for mixed-use development, office, commercial, really in trying to make it a lot more transit-oriented as well and bring in entertainment with that. And when we did the environmental document to be able to do that rezoning, we created that community facilities district too. And then that basic distribution of costs of all that infrastructure, the public safety component, water wells, the electrical infrastructure, sewer, grade separations, roadway widening, freeway off-ramp improvements, all of that was a mitigation rather than going project by project and seeing what project can build it before they build. And we would gather a couple projects when they can go in and focus in little sub areas. They create an opportunity or bonding capacity for us to go and sell bonds, pull it right out of our implementation plan for the CFD and build those improvements that support it. And that way we're getting economies of scale to build a full roadway widening from major arterial to major arterial rather than waiting for each individual developer to do a mid-block widening and seeing it all piecemeal. The community gets to enjoy a full build out of improvements.
That's great. And I know many agencies are looking at revenue issues or expense issues of their budget challenges. So I think a community facilities district is really interesting called CFD because you're basically saying, okay, the property owners from a development standpoint would have to pay regardless, either through the provision of the connection of the utility services or the roadway improvements necessary for their traffic. They would have to mitigate that somehow with the individual development, and that would cost them probably a lot more to do it individually. But together everyone achieves more team effort. You said, okay, we're going to look at an area, and all of those properties are going to benefit, but the cost of those projects are going to be less, right, because we're going to build them at scale, and then people just plug in either to the road network or the utility network and all of that. And then as people come in and permit, they just pay, or every year they pay through an assessment or something like that, right?
Yeah, through our taxes.
Yeah, so you're getting some revenue to pay back, but you all created the economic advantage by bigger project, lower cost per property, and then provision of the higher capacity so they can develop and go higher and have more value for their property.
Yeah, and that goes back to, let's repeat a formula that works, right? We did that. You mentioned funding. The resort is the perfect example for us right now. Back in the 90s, we sold about $500 million worth of bonds to build all those public improvements that you see and created all that capacity for all of these hotels and businesses that have developed in the expansion of a second park for Disney. Those bonds now are close to being paid off. We're expecting those to be paid off here before 28. When those bonds are paid off, that's plus $140 million of new general fund revenue coming into the city every year. And just another example, take risks, bond, and get that economy of scale to build it all out at once. Then it's a seed for future generations. And now we're excited because now that new revenue is going to be able to bring so many improvements all over the city, facilities, libraries, parks, all these things that are now part of a strategic plan that our council and our community get to opine on what they want to see next, because that really great planning 30 years ago.
Yeah. It's interesting and probably a little bit biased here on infrastructure funded with bonds, but if you can have a bond program set up that says, just based on the strategic plan you laid out, these are all the infrastructure assets we're going to construct. Infrastructure is one of the only things that has a return on your investment. So if you look at the amount of infrastructure you built over the years of that versus the cost of it now, we're obviously save money for that, but then you've generated value to the community and the city through the developments that sprung from that. But the ability to use the bonds as a dedicated source, I think there's also an efficiency there, because if every year you had to go through the budget process and say, oh, can I have a little piece for this water line? Can I have a little piece for this electric line or this road? Those all might not have come together in the sequence you needed to build the corridor. So I think that's why it's great that you guys were able to implement the bond program.
Absolutely.
Every year we're just going to pay the bonds. You know what the bonds are going for. Away you go. Awesome. All right, so all of this created the ability for developments along this corridor. Very prominent signature developments. If you're here in Orange County, you would know them by name. But as we start from one end and go back and forth with the other, you mentioned the Honda Center area and the OC Vibe development. Just want to ask you, for those who might not be familiar with that, can you give us a high-level overview of what the Honda Center was? You mentioned a little bit for that, and then that transformation and how the OC Vibe concept came to be.
Yeah. First, the Honda Center is a generational redevelopment of an area, right? And what the Honda Center was before, it was our 19,000-seat arena surrounded by surface parking lots and then other low-rise industrial buildings, office buildings. And the ownership of the Ducks, Henry Samueli, had a vision trying to create this legacy project. And I call it a legacy project because he is really not only just giving back to the community, but bringing a new downtown and just revitalizing an area that was very event focused, now to be a kind of year-round, all day long, attractive place you want to be. It'll be residential, office, of course the entertainment, another performing arts theater, a couple of hotels, work spaces, open spaces for a couple of parks being built. They acquired about 100 acres of property all around the Honda Center, built structured parking, and are redeveloping this amazing vision. They brought in a team that I call the A-team at every level that they brought in. And it's really exciting because it's also directly right across the street from Arctic. That's our regional transportation center. It's a future terminus of high-speed rail, but we have current rail service going there, bus service, connects to active transportation, and of course all the vehicles and all the other modes of transportation, TNCs coming in there. But that is directly across from that. And again, talking about investment, planting a seed, when we built Arctic, we could have just built a concrete tilt-up box. Again, not wanting to take risk, and you're just building a train station, just build it as cheap as you can. But I think as a community that sets high standards, you do have to put your money where your mouth is. And we built an iconic building. If you haven't seen Arctic, it's an ETFP structure, very iconic in shape, LEED Platinum, color changing at night. It's a really cool building, but that's the standard we want to see for any development. We knew that was part of the Platinum Triangle and the developers were going to come in. We had a vision of what it would look like. It's close, it's different. Obviously, OC5 had their own vision, but brought in a lot of those aspects that we wanted to see. So I think that created this expectation and this high level of design and wow factor that OC5 has brought into their project.
I agree. The Arctic facility, and maybe I'll try to put a picture up here so you all can see, it almost needed to be of a scale that matched. You have a hockey venue and you have a baseball venue to match into there. The scale, it almost had to have some more presence than just a block building, as you said. And then you mentioned one thing, just for the listeners, you said it was just event focused, the Honda Center. And I think for Public Works, from a transportation perspective, that means people were just coming in, event, and going out, right? So they weren't maybe contributing to the local area as much and maybe creating these extreme traffic flows instead of dispersing it out. And so the hope, I think, of OC5 is maybe people go earlier or stay longer and it spreads out the impact. And they spend more money or more time.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's spread the peanut butter. Yeah, we got that peak flow that came in about 45 minutes before an event, and then everybody's rushing out. That's part of it, but of course, a lot of the innovation that went in with the design of the structures too. The structures, you think about event centers, one of their main revenue sources is parking. That's no secret. But the parking at OC5 is completely free. They've removed all friction coming in and out of that building. You'll be able to come in right off of our freeway and go right into one of the parking structures, dedicated Uber and Lyft drop-offs, double helixes to get people all up into the structure, quick outflow as well. The people move over the traffic, so we'll have multiple bridges and all that pedestrian flow will be separated from the vehicle flow. That guest experience is really going to be huge, and it's always been top of mind when coming up with the concepts.
Yeah, and it's big. For our listeners, the public works professionals are probably thinking, what did it take to do that? So from your perspective on the infrastructure side, when it comes to transportation, roadway infrastructure, utilities infrastructure, dealing with traffic flows, what was the city's engagement in that? And you mentioned some of the things, direct access, the pedestrian bridges, all that stuff, but what do you recall about the city's interaction with that whole process?
Early on, we knew from a high level what the infrastructure needs were. A lot of those were already identified in the Platinum Triangle implementation plan as part of that CFD. It just came in as the plan had shifted. How do we be flexible and change things around where we thought streets were going to be widened here? Well, streets aren't going to exist anymore because now it's a new street that's going to be here. And really trying to work with the developer and realizing that the developer is the one that is bringing in a lot of this revenue to pay for the bond. So how do we help facilitate that and make it easier for them to bring in this asset? This is something I think any city would want in their city. They've been great to work with because we also have vision outside of their property too, like with the Riverwalk and creating more community spaces that will just complement off of their space.
I think a good lesson there about being flexible in the engineering world, all about standards, all about getting things right. But sometimes you have to give up a little bit to get something else. And at the end of the day, you're still going to make sure it's safe and all of that. But having some flexibility when those discussions go on, I think can help elevate those in the engineering profession as trying to be problem solvers or flexible to a new solution versus just saying, this is how we had it before and we have to do that because that was approved at one point.
Right.
So it sounds like you guys worked through that process.
Yeah, as long as we focus more on the long-term goal and just be flexible along the way, it is ultimately a better outcome for everyone involved. We definitely want our developers to be successful. We want their businesses to be successful. And we definitely have seen through experience that helps the city be successful, and all of our residents benefit from that.
Sure. That leads me a little bit into this question about coordination between different public agencies, either in or outside the city, and the private developers and some of the area property owners. How did you recall that all being coordinated, or how do you continue to coordinate that between all those different entities?
Yeah, it's a lot because there's a lot involved, but really it comes down to, I think, relationships, right? It's so critical in our industry. The technical side of it is just one part, right? And people get too caught up And that technical side, like you said, sometimes things have to be black and white, but we know, especially when we're dealing with infill type of projects and changes and just the realities and challenges that our world faces every day, we have to be flexible. We have to be able to build trust. We have to have those relationships. And that's not just with the developers, but like you said, with all of these different agencies. And we have so many that we need to get through. And understanding that sometimes their mission is completely different from yours. And while they might think your project is really cool and they'll probably want to come someday, what they do and what they're focused on and what they're trying to preserve is a much higher priority for them. So being able to communicate, find ways that find mutual benefit, and being able to communicate that benefit for everyone and bring everybody together is, I think, really the only way to get things done now.
Yeah, so communication, not just in public works, in every field, every issue is important. Also, you talked about having the bigger picture in mind and maybe trying to be outcome focused, like where we're trying to get to versus where we came from. So I think that's important. Now, we talked about the Platinum Triangle and that corridor, and the OC Vibe development is on one end of that, on the east end. On the other end of that, I believe you have Disneyland in the Anaheim resort area. And another major initiative is called the Disney Forward project, which could obviously reshape the future of Disneyland and the resorts in Anaheim. To the extent you can speak about this, because Disney wants to be protective of what's happening over there, and we understand that. How does the city then plan for long-term infrastructure on a project like that, where the impact is going to be over decades, maybe not over years, it's going to be almost generational. So how do you plan your infrastructure to support something like that?
Yeah, it starts with that communication, right? We have a great partnership with Disney, and we want to make sure that we understand what their vision is and understand that it's going to change. And they understand that those changes will also impact our planning for our infrastructure, right? They do come to the table with resources to be able to build the infrastructure that's needed. And we are not only looking at it within the resort, but how that infrastructure impacts areas outside the resort. So we can find ways not just to, we're going to upsize a sewer line. We're making sure it's not just to take the Disney flow, but all the hotels that will come, but also all of the development that we see outside of it. We have another area of the city, the center city area, that's going to drain directly in there. So we want to make sure that we're planning everything large enough and flexible enough so they can have the flexibility. They don't know yet exactly what's going to go where, but they want to be able to have that flexibility. Trends will change, but we know at least we've built the infrastructure sized large enough, but gives them limits. And they know what limits they can work with. They know they could go up to so much outflow a day, and that's what they're going to work with when they get there. Just that constant communication and flexible planning, and know that our project's got to be built in phases. Going in, we all know it, and can work around it.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you've been to any of the Disney parks, you know that there's an evolution to it, and it has to change and be fresh, and sometimes it's product-based or movie-based. They don't know which one is going to be the best one ever, and then they have to adapt to that. So then the cities have to be adaptive a little bit there. Diving down one level as we try to discuss infrastructure, what were some of the biggest considerations in getting that approved, or what are the biggest things you're looking at going forward? And thinking about mobility, utilities, the guest experience, getting there through the city to that park, what kind of sticks out to you on that? I know there's a bunch of different pieces working together.
Yeah, mobility is the big one for us. We're saying even in that initiative we're going through right now, we're calling it Resort 2.0. We're getting 26 million visitors in the resort now, but we're planning for 40, and how those people move around and how's that guest experience for them. Disney has one of the largest parking structures on their west side now, and they're planning on building a very large one on the east side now. And again, bridges and mobility and how we get people from the freeways and into those structures and back out again, and make that a smoother movement for them in the resort, especially at the end of the day when the kids are tired and they're all in the car and everything. You want to be able to make sure everybody's getting out quickly.
Maybe more predictable.
Yeah, exactly. Mobility is a big one. And then the transit, how that comes into play, because a lot of people are coming and staying in our resort, and we want people to come and have multiple days here in the resort. So how are we moving them around? And of course, Carless is our best option. So having a transit system that, again, is reliable, easy to use, seamless. I'm thinking about when you're dealing with families with strollers, and how do you make that experience enjoyable for them? And then how does that connect to all the other destinations? Because while we have the Platinum Triangle on one side of the 5 freeway, our resort is on the other. And how do we connect these two pieces? So having that, and what we're calling our East-West connector, connect these two from Arctic to our convention center and Disney, is going to be another critical role.
It's interesting when you talk about trying to move towards a potential carless solution. If somebody is proximate to Disneyland in the city of Anaheim, they are going to have some transit options or increasingly more transit options. If they're just beyond the city, they are going to have some transit options, maybe vehicle options where they have to be and then use those parking structures. But then people out of state or that are coming in on planes or trains or whatever, they get to their hotels, then you have a transit option, right, that works between the hotels.
That's correct.
So they don't have to then get another rental car potentially. That's great. So how do the public works teams work successfully with a partner like Disney? And we talked about communication, but maybe getting a little bit more technical. So you have a proprietary brand. They want to protect some things. That's their Imagineers, and that's what makes them great. You have regular engineers that need to implement solutions that meet some city standards. Most of the things you might work on in the city are not going to rise to the level of an amusement park type strain on your infrastructure or a need to fulfill for your infrastructure. So how do your technical public works teams figure out, okay, normally we do it this way, but in this case, still going to be safe and accommodating everything, but how do we deal with that scale or that type of nuanced system?
Yeah. I'll address what we're going through now because of the scale part of it, right? Because with the development of Disneyland Forward, they're committed to spending billions of dollars over the next few years, and they are coming in hot and heavy. They always have things going on coming into the city, but because of volume and the predictability that they need in terms of timing, and not just knowing when it's going to come back, but also working with dedicated staff that is consistent, they've agreed to enter into an agreement with the city to fund certain positions so we are able to give them that dedicated staff, give them those predictable timelines, and then work with our consultants to be able to look at how we can creatively shorten plan review times, but also there's a carrot and stick with the approach that we have to get things done under the time frame. Disney will pay them a higher rate, but if they miss the dates, then they get deducted from their rate. So there's that carrot and stick, and want to be able to meet those critical timelines because there is so much going on, and a delay in one spot will impact something else, and all those things have very large financial impacts. And being able to meet the demands of their customers or shareholders, everyone else who is invested in seeing a great development to continue the tradition that they have.
Yeah, that's interesting. So part of the strategies you have is communication, obviously, but predictable and communication with the same type of people and teams that they know, and this team probably dedicated so that it's not like your plans go into a group that's doing plans all over the city. It's a dedicated resource, predictable resource. I like your creativity with holding the consultants to a different standard with some risk reward there. But the traditional alternative would have been if you don't meet your deadline at the end of the schedule, then there's a penalty. But at that point, you've already missed the deadline. So this allows you to, along the way, turn the volume up or down to get that. And then people might say, every developer wants to get done sooner. Yes, but I think Disney outlaying billions of dollars and not able to get a return on that until the park actually opens is next level.
Yeah.
So I think that's cool.
And we don't want to impact our residents and every other business that's coming into the city because we know Disney is important, but not at the cost of other plan checks and things being held up or taking longer because we're focusing on Disney. Disney's on their standalone track, and then we're continuing to provide the highest levels of service to every other development or resident that comes in and wants to do some improvements on the property.
A good point. So that dedicated resource and team funded and maybe consultants then allows everybody else to continue to focus on the rest of the city.
Exactly.
So both sides win.
Right.
That's great. Okay, so there's a lot going on in this corridor, but there's stuff sometimes that's happening which you all don't control, and that in this area is the Olympics, right? The LA 28 Olympics. I know you've spoken on panels about this, and Anaheim is one of the venue cities for that. Do you want to just talk about that a little bit? What's Anaheim's role in the Olympics first as a venue city, and then what does that take from a public works standpoint to prepare for a global event like the Olympics?
Yeah, just first on the event, we're hosting volleyball, and that's at the Honda Center, and that's going to be over 2 weeks, 4 events a day until we get to the medal rounds towards the end. You think about loading and unloading a building of that size. We have 17,000 spectators for the events 4 times a day.
Because every team brings their own crowds.
Their own crowds, right? They're all separately ticketed events. That, and then with the security that's involved around Olympics. So we're going to have the Secret Service is all working on their security plans, and we'll have those plans, and we're coordinating at a very high level at this point, but how vehicles will come in, how close they'll be able to approach, where they'll park, how we move people from where they park, because there'll be perimeters involved. All that comes into play. And not only for the several weeks around the Olympics, we still have everything else going on around our city. If there are impacts to major corridors or freeways, then how do we adjust for that? How do we make sure that life continues to go on unimpacted? So a lot of that coordination, like I said, it's early. Working with the Games Route Network, how we're bringing people in, working with our surrounding properties and partners, and then making sure that all the improvements that are under construction now are all built by the Olympics too. So we'll make sure that we deliver on the commitments we've made.
Yeah, but the Olympics is not moving the deadline because the infrastructure is not complete.
Absolutely.
The other thing I was thinking about when you mentioned the changeover in the games and all of that is you most likely will have attendees that have never been there before.
Right.
So it's one thing for your hockey fans and season ticket holders, they know what to do in and out. But now you've got people entering a situation they've never been in before, maybe never been in the country before, and they've got to figure that out 4 times a day.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, but we deal a lot with the international community. We are a world-class destination. I think we lean in on what we know and just improve upon that, and that's where this opportunity helps us create these learning opportunities, how we can continue to get better as we get bigger.
Sure. Anything you want to mention that the work tied to the Olympics or the impact of the Olympics in relation to opportunities it creates for Anaheim beyond just that event?
Yeah, I think the transit portion is the big one, right? So as we are working on our initiative for the East-West connector that connects the Platinum Triangle and the resort, we won't have that East-West connector built by the Olympics, but all the systems that we do put in place help lead that data that we're going to need to make informed decisions on how we move people. So I think that's going to be pretty critical. Again, just being able to be on a world stage and put a good face forward for the city of Anaheim leads into wanting to continue to have people come back to Anaheim long after the Olympics as well and enjoy everything else we have here.
Yeah, for sure. So you're able to take advantage of a few things. You'll have lessons learned. You'll be able to tax like the OC Vibe area and some of your transit systems with heavy influx of visitors in a segmented way as you look at building out the rest of the corridor.
Yeah, and infrastructure that we could advance. This gives us the opportunity to advance those initiatives earlier for the Olympics.
Great. In a small site across the street, I'm joking there, it's the Angels Stadium redevelopment site, lots of acreage, much like OC Vibe where it has a central stadium and then parking lots. The Angels Stadium redevelopment has a central stadium, and then it's been building up a little bit, but still a lot of area that could be developed. I know that's a key target area for the city over years. People have been trying to figure that out. From your perspective, in order to make that successful, what are some key infrastructure considerations for that redevelopment, which is a mixed use, again, transportation, connectivity, utilities, the right mixture of development, accessing the high-speed rail center, all of that. How are you going to make that successful from an infrastructure standpoint?
Yeah, so luckily, again, that being in our Platinum Triangle, I think we got the infrastructure component figured out, and we can make that reliable and predictable for the developer and what they decide to do. I think one of the key things we need to figure out is we know our stadium is one of the oldest in Major League Baseball. So what we're going to do with that stadium, is it going to be putting more money into that stadium, which we've done before, and improve that to the standard, or do we rebuild a new one? And of course, again, we're always concerned about the entertainment side of it. We want to make sure our fans that come and see baseball are not interrupted and be able to do that. And then what's the best plan around it? How does it tie into our future Riverwalk? How does it tie into Arctic? How does it tie into the OC Vibe? Because Platinum Triangle, we're going to be blessed with multiple sites that are going to feel like the center of interest. And OC Vibe is going to be I think the Angel Stadium site will be as well, just like the resort and so many other areas we have in our city that have just become their own little unique ecosystem.
Yeah, interesting. Talking about taxing the system a little bit so you'll be able to figure out how it works. The Olympics are the Summer Olympics, right? And baseball is obviously happening in the summer. So you're likely to have at least one or more days where events happening at the same time.
It's early now, but we're hoping that Major League Baseball is going to either take a break for one of the weeks, okay, and then the other week that the Angels will be playing away games, so we'll be able to have that separated, because I think we are going to rely on a lot of the parking at Angel Stadium for the Olympics at the Honda Center.
So some more advanced planning to work on and all of that. But again, Public Works usually right at the middle of all those discussions.
Right. Yep.
That's another interesting thing happening. So bringing it back to the city in general, a lot of exciting things going on, obviously, outside the city hall walls. But as you look ahead the next 10, 20 years, just wanted to look at the evolution of public works, especially in fast-growing cities like Anaheim with all the developments going on we talked about. What trends are you watching closely in the evolution of public works, maybe from a technology, sustainability, mobility aspect? What are you focused in on? I know you have to focus on many things, but...
The mobility piece, again, because of the East-West connector, it's really exciting. I'm meeting with a lot of technology companies that are really bringing just some amazing innovations. Of course, we always hear about autonomous vehicles and everything else, but beyond autonomous vehicles, whether it's a fixed guideway system, a gondola system, individual pods, railless streetcar, so many great things that are being done all around the world, or things that I think we're still learning about what will be the best system that works for us. And we're really going to be looking at a P3 opportunity to bring some private investment into. As a city, we provide a great opportunity where we have the visitors, we have the guests, we have the developments, we have the destinations, but moving that around, how do we share some of that risk with the private industry that bring in, I think, an amazing asset in innovation, being able to move quickly, just bring in the financing component of it. So the technology out there and how we move people around is really exciting to me. And then, of course, what everybody's talking about, AI. I'm just really excited about how AI is really going to transform anything from asset management and being able to put cameras on our street sweepers that are going to drive our streets anyway, and they can do an inventory of every no parking sign, red curb, sidewalk, tree, and be able to just pull all that data for us together and then just be a force multiplier for us as we're planning for future disruption.
Yeah, interesting. AI gets into every profession, it seems like now. You're talking about the trend or the issue. My next question is about the roles of public works professionals. How do you see those changing, especially for those in leadership? I think you've given us a hint on one, being open to data, AI, new technologies. Any other thoughts on that for the roles of public works professionals?
Yeah, we talked about the relationship building. It's so important because we tend to be so technical. It's the relationships, the communication, understanding policy, understanding financing, really having that systems thinking is where I think to grow in public works. Those are the areas I think in our profession everyone really needs to start to grow and not focus so much on the technical side of things.
Yeah. People are now looking, I think, more for engineers or public works folks to provide the solution.
Right.
Don't provide the hurdle.
Yeah.
The hurdle or the obstacle was meant to protect you, but with everything else changing, we need to then relook at the standard, the obstacle, whatever, however it's perceived,
Right.
into, okay, let me pull that out of the way and let me look at a solution, be part of that going forward. Because smart people in public works, they can figure it out. We just need to shift where the focus is, I think, a little bit. I think that's good advice. And speaking of that, what other advice might you give to the next generation of folks entering this field?
Be open to technology. Live in the gray. That black and white is not the only way. Early in your career, get that field experience. I think a lot of us come in as designers, and I stress out there to all of our young engineers, you can't design something if you've never seen it built. You just know that the challenges the contractors go, is it constructible? You really understand that aspect of it. I think just makes you that much better of an engineer, and then also the maintenance side of it. So really trying to get a well-rounded understanding of the full life cycle of a project, how you maintain it, how long it lasts, and sustainability is another huge one for us that I think we always need to be thinking about how we do things better. I think part of my career where I got to build Arctic and that being a LEED Platinum building, and realizing that so many times people think, well, it's sustainable, it's just going to be more expensive. But no, not always. You do the full life cycle cost of something and realize you're saving money by doing this, and it's the right thing to do, and really embracing a lot of sustainability as well.
That's good advice. I think two things that I picked up there. One is when you're out in the field, you can start to appreciate one phase of the project, and I like your advice about trying to identify and be involved in all aspects of the project, especially earlier in your career, because as you potentially advance, you might get into one area a little bit more than the other, and you're going to have to rely on your knowledge of what's happening outside of your view to help inform, to make your piece of that the best it can be, so you never know which one you're going to be plugged into.
Right.
The second piece of it, which I like about your advice, is when you look at a design on a computer or on paper like we used to, you usually are looking at what's within the right-of-way, right? What's in the city-owned boundary. What's the road look like? What's the utilities look like? What's my safety infrastructure impact? But when you go to the field, you can look at what's right on the other side of that line, and that can sometimes influence. Oh, there's a daycare there, that might be an issue, or there's a park there, people are going to want to go that way. So you can't always see that on the computer screen. So I think that's good advice to get out there and see what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the pet peeves of mine is not getting out there and seeing what that surrounding environment is. And people appreciate some thoughtfulness around aesthetics and tying into the community. Just doing just those little cool things in the project to make it different, even if it's just little aspects of public art. And to me, public art can be the most simple things. Yeah. We have so many pockets here in our Anaheim. I'm so proud of where we're at right now as part of our colony district within the original borders of Anaheim, and we have certain treatment. So instead of using the same standard wall that we use all over the city, we can create something that is unique to that area of our city.
Yeah, a little aesthetic treatment sustainably in public infrastructure can go a long way, because people are going to see that potentially every day for 50 years.
Yeah.
So just a little extra bit can go a long way. That's all good advice. A couple of just quick hitters, if you don't mind, as we wrap up here today. Appreciate your time. Do you recall one project that you're most excited about right now, or one you worked on?
Right now, I'm really excited about that East-West connector. Again, just learning about the different technologies, the opportunities, and being able to connect these major important areas of our city, especially when anything that we do in a resort. I always say, does it bring the magic? And when I look at some of these technologies, I think they do bring the magic, because when our guests come and they say, I want to ride on that. It's almost like that first ride of their visit to Anaheim, and when they see our resort with the color changing palm trees and things like that. Again, those are the things that bring the magic. So I think our East-West connector is going to be along those lines, and I want to see that happen. I'm really excited.
Yeah, I agree there. When we say East-West connector, on the east end, we have the things we've been talking about, right? Honda Center, OC Vibe, high-speed rail, or to the baseball stadium. And then you have this connector through the Catella corridor, which has then on this end the convention center and Disney and hotel districts and all that stuff. So people need to get from A to B.
Right.
And how do they do that without having to get in the car? Right?
Yep.
That's the connectivity piece of it. That's a good one. How about the biggest challenge for local government public works agencies today?
Biggest challenge, the low-hanging fruit are always, we have a lot of changing regulations and things like that. Funding always becomes a problem. We're always challenged on bringing in new talent. I think we're more fortunate than most, because I think we do attract a lot of people in the sense that we have some exciting things to work on, but it's still difficult. I think we need to continue to build our talent pool.
I think that's a good one. I've seen that for almost every public agency. You're up against some challenges with private sector opportunities, right?
Yeah.
Work from home, project flexibility, wages, all of that.
Yeah.
And you all have different things to offer than another city, so maybe you're stealing from others, I don't know, but it's a constant issue, I know, especially as generationally we have people retiring at a higher rate and have to backfill that. So that's a good one. I agree with that. How about one innovation that every city should be paying attention to right now?
Yeah, I think back to the mobility, because even when we talk about the East-West connector, that's only going to be one piece of the solution. We're still always going to have the TNCs. We're going to have our train system, our future high-speed rail. Whatever that is, I really want us to be working through all those organizations to try to figure out how we do the kind of single tap-to-pay models that we already see that already exist out like in Europe. Right now it's difficult. Either people that are local here are too afraid of transit because it's confusing. How do I pay for it? Where do I go?
You haven't had to do it before.
Yeah. But then you go to other countries and you go, wow, they figured it out here. But when we also have guests that come from those other countries, then that doesn't look very good on us if we haven't figured it out yet. So I think that's something we really need to be paying attention to and work on as a larger region and country to promote more transit use.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the challenge is sometimes people only think about mobility options when the gas prices hit $5 or $6 a gallon, which we're experiencing now. But at that point, it's too late to do all the planning and build all the infrastructure and the systems to accommodate a different source than the vehicles. I think having that mindset's important. As you say, in other countries, I was in Japan recently, in Europe, you approach it differently. You're not thinking about how do I get to this destination on a car. You're thinking, how do I get to this destination because I don't have a car and I still want to use the system to get there. Just a little bit different mindset there. So that's a good one. Wrapping up here, Rudy, this has been a great conversation. It's clear that Public Works is at the center of what's helping to shape Anaheim's future, from major developments to global events like the Olympics to trying to refine the way the system operates. If people want to learn more about what's going on here in Anaheim or connect with you, what's the best way they can do that?
Shoot me an email, or I'm on LinkedIn, my email, or emami@anaheim.net.
Okay. And then city's website.
City's website, we have our capital improvement program on our website. And we have a lot of resources, information about future developments, a lot of our planning, our visioning documents, our strategic plan. All that is available on our website.
Okay, good. We'll post that in the show notes. And I want to thank Rudy for his time being on the show today. Really appreciate it. You got a lot going on, a lot of exciting things.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking the time, and thanks to you all for listening to this episode of the Public Works Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please like it on YouTube, share it with a friend, subscribe, check us out on LinkedIn, and be sure to support that public service professional in your community that's helping your quality of life be improved every day. Until next time, I've been your host, Shane Silsby. Thanks again for tuning into the show.
That was my discussion with Rudy Emami from the City of Anaheim. Rudy did a great job taking us through the interesting things that are happening in the city. Here's Anaheim City Hall right behind me. It's clear that Public Works isn't just about maintaining infrastructure. It's about enabling the future of a city like the City of Anaheim. From OC Vibe and the Disneyland Forward initiative to the LA 28 Olympics and the future development of the Angels Stadium site, these projects don't just happen overnight, and they don't happen without planning, coordination, communication, and leadership happening behind the scenes. To Rudy, we appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your perspectives on what it takes to deliver at that scale. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe, share, like, and pass this on to a colleague. Follow along as we continue to highlight the people and projects shaping public works across the country. This has been a special episode of the Public Works Podcast. Thanks. Okay, so in this discussion today, we talked about the Disney Forward plan, or the expansion, and that's kind of the area behind me right now. You can see downtown Disney where we're at, but beyond that, all those parking fields is where that expansion is generally planned. You can see across the way is California Adventure, and then Disneyland is further down that way. But this is the exciting piece of the expansion of Disneyland Resort here in Anaheim. I just wanted to give you some perspective and show you with boots on the ground what we were talking about in this interview. So here's the happiest place on earth, right back there. We're looking for Happiest Place Phase 3 right over here. Thanks. We talked about a few of the developments on the east end of what we call that east-west connector, and you can see back here the OC Vibe development. It's a mixed-use development rising up there, right next to the Honda Center. You heard us talk about that. That's where the Anaheim Ducks play. That's where concerts take place. That's where the LA 28 Olympic events for Anaheim will be. So that's going to be wrapped all around by this OC Vibe development eventually. And then we also talked about the importance of transit connectivity. And so you can see the Arctic Center here, the Anaheim Regional Transportation Intermodal Center. And we talked about the scale of that and how important that is to the community. And then you can see, likely down past that, the Angels indicator, their big sign for the stadium, which we'll visit next. But you can see all in this area, we have the Anaheim Regional Transportation Intermodal Center, we have OC Vibe there, and we have the Honda Center here. So important area at the east end of the east-west connector. The Disney project was on the west end. All right. Okay, here's the Anaheim Regional Transportation Intermodal Center. Let's see if we have that right. Yes, Anaheim Regional Transportation Intermodal Center, called Arctic. You can see that here in scale right across the street, really, from the Honda Center there. And then the baseball stadium is in the back over here, which will be our next stop. So just wanted you to get an idea for the scale of that. It's a multi-story building. From an internal perspective, it's pretty much a single or two-story in its uses inside that. But now you can see here, this is a high-speed rail convertible station for support for that transit route. There you go. Okay, the last stop on our Anaheim development tour. You can see a lot of what's happening in the city here. Behind me is the Angels Stadium, the baseball stadium for the Anaheim team. And you can see all around is area that has the potential for development. That's why we were talking about that in relation to what's happening here. You can see the big iconic sign that signifies when you've made it to Angel Stadium, and that is along the 5 freeway corridor. And then just to orient you to where we've been, down in that direction is the Anaheim Regional Transportation Intermodal Center. So that is right down that way. That's where we were. The Honda Center behind that. Everything's in a bit of proximity, so the discussion is how do you connect it? How do you then redevelop this area where we're standing here to make the best sense for helping this use and helping the city's use along this east-west corridor we've been talking about, which goes kind of in this direction. Anyway, that's it from downtown Anaheim. Thanks.